So my question for you tonight is, how are you doing with peace? Right? We're asked to live with peace. Peace within ourselves, peace within our neighbors, peace on earth, peace with all of life. And so how are you doing with that? Anybody else feel like peace is harder than we thought it was supposed to be? Right? I mean, every Sunday we sing, "Let there be peace on earth and let it begin with them." Right? Right? And it's this idea that if them would just get it right, then who couldn't be in peace, right? If they would just get their stuff together, then we could all be in peace. And yet peace is hard. It's hard. Inner peace is hard. It's hard to be in peace. And then when you factor in 7.9 billion people on this planet, peace even gets more interesting, right? Because we have all these wants and needs and desires. We have those levels of healing, the levels of brokenness. We have our stories. We have our drama. And all that's circulating. It's all in the tub. It's all swirling around. And we're trying to get to peace. And for most of us, there's been a belief that if they would just let us be in charge, we could get to peace. If they would just let us be in charge long enough, we could do this. And that over and over again, that's what our ego says, right? That our ego believes that if our ego could be in charge for a day, a week, a month, we could get to peace. But the reality is that peace is a byproduct of our spiritual life. That peace really is what happens when we go deeper and deeper into God. And our ego wants to stay on the surface and fix things and change things and be busy and doesn't trust the outcome. And our spirit, our soul just rests in the knowledge that God has got it under control. And so my question for you tonight is how much time and energy do you actually spend in peace? Because I think for most of us, we think we spend more time in peace than we actually do. I believe that more people are anxious or upset or fearful than they realize, but it has become so normal to be anxious and upset and fearful and concerned that we just think that's normal. And tonight, I really want to throw a challenge out to really look at what is your tolerance for peace. And what would you have to let go of? What thought, what belief, what intention, what expectation, what desire would you have to let go of to move into peace? Because if we can't do peace within the individual, I don't think we're ever going to have peace within our families or our community or the world. That peace really does have to generate from within. And as we have peace within ourselves, it's amazing how much the rest of the world doesn't tick us off. Have everybody had that experience where you were so grounded, you were so at peace with yourself, with who you are, with your life, that it was like, well, I could get upset about that, but really why? That it was just too much work. It was just too much energy spent in your ego trying to manipulate situations that were just taking us away from peace. That Jesus over and over again gave us this invitation to a level of peace that was staggering. He said, have I said this to you, that in me you may have peace, for in the world you have tribulation, but be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. Have I said this not to you? In me you will have peace. Right? There is this opportunity that life is always going to be upsetting to our ego. Life is always going to be scary or anxious. We're never going to be able to create a world that doesn't have ups and downs. But as we move more and more into our connection to God, our ego gets less and less attached to the ride. Because if you trust God, how upset do you need to be about anything? If you trust God, if you let your life unfold in the divine way, in a divine order, as we call it in unity, as you allow it to unfold in an orderly way, you get to know a level of peace. And John 14:20 said, "Is that peace I leave with you, and my peace do I give unto you. Not as the world do I give this unto you. So let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid." Paul said this in 2 Corinthians, and I really want you to hear this as kind of a roadmap to peace. He says, "Finally, brethren, rejoice." And then he gives us 3 commandments, 3 challenges. He said, aim for restoration, comfort one another, and agree with one another. And live in peace, and the God of love and peace will be with you. So what are the challenges? The first one is that we have to aim for restoration. How many of you have a person or a group or a thought that you have not yet been willing to aim for restoration? That you really want them to be them as far away from you as possible. Like if it's a neighbor, if they could move across the country, it would be better, right? Or a family member or a friend or somebody maybe you worked with. And this is a challenge for us. Now, he doesn't say accomplish restoration. He says aim for restoration. Because aiming for restoration is a desire of your heart. That I want to be restored to, in every relationship I have, to the very best that's possible. Because sometimes, even if you do your very best in a relationship, you may not feel fully restored in that relationship. That relationship may be outside your ability to heal, to fix, because all you have control over is your side of the street. Right? You only have responsibility for what you do, for what you can do, for what you're putting out there, for what you're saying, for what you're thinking. And you don't have really power over how they respond to it. But when we aim for restoration, it increases the probability that we move into healing. The next point, comfort one another. Now, how many of us enjoy when someone comforts us? I do. Like when somebody reaches out and says, "Are you okay?" or "Can I get you anything?" or I'm like, well, that is just so nice, right? They like care enough to offer this, or they're offering comfort, they're offering support. It's nice. It is easier to make amends or to ask for forgiveness or to heal a relationship when you feel that the person is for you, if they're comforting you, if they're wanting to support you. And when we become that person in other people's lives, our relationships tend to be better. Sometimes I like to be the little burr in the saddle. Does anybody else ever do that? When I was in ministerial school, I had a colleague say, or one of my fellow students say, that he wanted to comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable. And I thought, that's me, right? And I had to really check that part of my ego that wants to just kind of, I want to be loving, but not too loving, right? I want to just kind of, just an occasional little love zing, right? And what I realize is that's not the full mature aspect of me, right? That's like the 5-year-old who just wants to, nobody else ever wants to zing somebody just for grins. Is this just me? Okay, well then I'm going to move on then, all right. And the third point is to agree with one another. Now, if you watch the news, really any news right now, you would never believe that the purpose of our country is to agree with one another. The whole news industry is based on working that we don't agree with one another. And what this says is that we agree with one another. And the difficulty with this one is if you just deal with superficial desires, you can find 1 million people to disagree with. If you go to deeper desires, we all kind of stand pretty close together. We all want the same things or similar things for our children. We all want air that we can breathe and water that's safe to drink. And we all We all have some core desires. And sometimes in conversations and in connection and relationship, we sometimes get lost in all the little details on the outside because we haven't had conversations that take us deep enough to say, I want that for my kids too. I want my kids to have a good education. I want my grandkids to have a good education. There are things that we all want. And we may see the way to get there differently, but the underlying desire is the same. One of the things I've learned from my wife is that we don't see life the same. Anybody else ever been in a relationship with somebody who didn't see the world the way you see the world? And we actually want the same thing, right? We just go about it about as differently as possible. If she wants me to turn right, I want to turn left. If I want to go up, she wants to go down. And what we've learned in our relationship is that if we start talking about the way and not where we're going, we can get lost in the differences. Not really lost, but you can have a disagreement about them. No, this is the better way. No, this is the better way. And I think that that's true for all of us. There's people in our life that are too important to us to let the disagreements keep us from the deeper truth. And I think the same thing is for God. That if you actually believe that God wanted for you everything that you wanted for yourself, you wouldn't be as concerned about how you get there. If you believe that every one of your most important desires, health, happiness, abundance, relationship, if you really believe that God wanted you to have each and every one of those things, you would be less concerned about how you got there because you know that God was going to get you there. So you wouldn't stress out. You would just say, thy will be done. You would just trust the process, and you would find that over and over again, the thing that you want most is truly God's desire for each and every one of us. But when we don't believe that our spouse or God or the people in our life really have our highest intention, then we get locked into conflict. Because we believe we have to fight to get our needs met. We have to fight to get our way. We have to fight to get our desires. And we kind of get lost in this level of, I need to take care of myself because nobody else will. And that's what our ego tells us over and over again. I must take care of myself. But I want you to really breathe into this moment for a moment. And what if everything that you desire for your life truly was God's will for you? What if everything you want, whatever you can name, health, prosperity, love, joy, whatever you want, was truly 100% God's desire for you? Would you find it easier to let go and trust the process? But when you don't truly believe that God's got your best interests at heart, then you don't trust it. You move into your ego, you move into control, you move into manipulation, you begin to create your great plans. And I want you to see that your plans often take you from peace. The two most important things, I think, to live a life of peace, to create peace in our world, is trust and acceptance. That we have to trust God, we have to trust ourselves, we have to trust our neighbors, we have to trust our friends, we have to trust our family, we have to trust. And then we have to accept. And sometimes acceptance is hard because we didn't think it was going to go that way. We didn't want it to go that way. That doesn't look like the right way. The right way looks like this way. And we get locked in our ego's intent of this is the way my life should unfold. And today what I want you to see is that where could your life be easier with trust and acceptance? Where is there room in your life for more peace with trust and acceptance? Could you trust that life, the universe, spirit, only has good for you? and that it could work together for your highest good in greater and greater and greater ways. You remember Desiderata? The poem was written, well, it's a saying, written in 1920 by Max Ehrlichman. And this is the first, I'm going to read the first and the last paragraph. Go placid among the noise and the haste, and remember that peace there may be in silence. For as far as possible, without surrender, be on good terms with all persons. Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to others, even the dull and the ignorant, for they have their own story. Avoid loud, aggressive persons, for they are vexations to the spirit. You are a child of the universe. No less than the trees and the stars, you have a right to be here. Whether or not it is clear to you, no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should. Therefore be at peace with God, whatever you conceive him to be, or her to be. It doesn't say the her. I'm bringing it in 100-year later language. And whatever labors and aspiration and the noisy confusion of life, keep peace in your soul. With all of its shams and drudgery and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world. Be cheerful and strive to be happy. 100 years later, it sounds pretty true, doesn't it? I mean, it didn't miss the mark. I mean, it is the essence of the whole journey of it's like, am I going to have a spiritual experience? Am I going to learn to trust God? Is it going to be okay? Am I safe? Can I really depend on a power greater than myself to move my life in a direction that is important to me? What if God really was going to move your life in the direction that was important to you? The Huffington Post wrote an article. In the Huffington Post, there was an article recently about the 5 things that we can do to create a greater level of peace, not only within ourselves, but in the world. First thing that it says is commit to inner peace. If violence begins with stressful thoughts in mind, then peace begins with silence in the mind. And I really want you to hear that, because 140 years ago when unity was started, the dominant thought in the world was negative. Now, I might be able to make a case that I'm not sure it's gotten much more positive in the last 140 years, but the dominant thought of 140 years ago was negative. And when unity came onto the scene, they invited people to have a positive thought, a positive outlook, positive thinking. And that was a radical thought in the world. To actually have a positive thought, to actually believe that possibilities, to believe that life could get better. That was a radical thought. And 100 years later, all those things that Unity's been teaching are now in best-selling books and speakers and teachers, and it's not so radical anymore. But the next radical thought is, as crazy as it was to move from negative thinking to positive thinking, the movement that we're in now is to move from positive thinking to no thought. To actually learning to quiet our mind so in the stillness of our mind we can feel God. Because when we're in the monkey mind, we're in the busy mind, there is no stillness. And it's hard to truly experience God. So when you go from negative thinking to positive thinking, it creates a huge difference in your life. But moving from positive thinking to a quiet mind allows us to move to peace. That when your mind is still, your life is still. And you can feel God. If violence begins with stressful thoughts in the mind, then peace begins with silence in the mind. According to the American Institute of Stress, 44% of Americans report feeling more stressed than they did 5 years ago. Just as we need a shower to eat and to exercise daily, it goes on and says, we need to practice healthy ways of releasing stress on a daily basis. And then they make a big case for meditation, prayer and meditation, as the way of training our mind to quiet our mind so that we can actually live from a quiet place. And it doesn't mean we can't turn our mind on to solve a problem, but we don't leave it running 24/7. Second thing it said is to perform acts of kindness and generosity. The research is really stunning that if you witness somebody performing an act of kindness or generosity, your likelihood of performing an act of kindness and generosity goes through the roof. That we need to see people acting from kindness and generosity to remind ourselves of what goodness is. Sometimes we get so focused on getting our needs met or getting a project done or getting the deadline accomplished that we forget that selfless acts of service actually uplift consciousness, that we're actually comforted by it, we're supported by it. It actually leads us into a greater life. The third point that they make is creating life balance. And they make a case that for many of us that we've kind of lost our natural balance, that we're not living in balance with ourselves. And in Unity, we teach that there are 4 aspects of living a life in balance. There's the spiritual component, the intellectual component, the emotional component, and the physical component. And if peace is really what we're after, then it's like, what physically do I need to do to be at peace? Do I need to exercise or eat better, sleep or drink better water? What do I need to do physically to support myself? And emotionally, what do I need to do? Do I need to spend more time feeling loved? Or intellectually, do I need to be more inspired? Spiritually, do I need to feel more connected to God? That each one of these things, when we bring ourselves into balance, peace is the natural consequence. And the fourth point was to eliminate prejudice. And they quoted from the American writer E.B. White that wrote, "Prejudice is the great time saver. You can form opinions without ever having to get to the facts." I love that, right? If you already have an opinion going in, if you already think you know how it's going to work, then you never have to get to the facts, right? And over again, as we eliminate prejudice, we actually have a higher probability of living in a culture where it works what Martin Luther King called the beloved community. You know, how many of you, your kids or your grandkids, or maybe you did, watch Sesame Street? Anybody watch Sesame Street with your kids or your grandkids? You know, their underlying goal of Sesame Street is to grow smarter, stronger, kinder children. There are 150 countries around the world with that model. Grow smarter, stronger, kinder children. How fabulous is that? That underlying everything is not just learning how to read or write or the numbers or their letters, but it's to create children, to support children in being smarter, stronger, and kinder. And the fifth point that the article made was resolve to be happy. And the research, they quote from Harvard. Harvard did a research study on the effects of happiness. And I've shared this with you before. And there's really 2 studies that were just off the charts, that just rocked everybody's world. The first one that showed happiness, how much a happy person impacts people around them. And the research shows that, and I think it was 250 feet, that a happy person, where a happy person lives, actually impacts a neighborhood about 250 feet. And that if you live next door to a happy person, just being next door to a happy person is going to have an impact, and you're actually going to feel happier. And there's actually research now that proves that. So the happier you are, the more you're going to actually impact your neighborhood. The other research study they had was that a happy person has a 3-dimensional effect on the people around them. So a happy person not only impacts themselves, but they in fact impact their sphere, all the people that are their friends and family, and then it goes out one more level. So if you're happy, not only do you impact the second level, all the people around you, but you impact all of their friends and their family just because you're happy. Like, what if the only way we can get to world peace is by helping people get happy? What if that's one of the most powerful things that we can do is that the happier you get, well, Richard, I'm a happy person. Well, darling, let your face know it, right? Right? Yeah, I can feel the joy just radiating off of you. And some of us really think we're happy people, and it's like, I'm not feeling it, and if I'm not feeling it, I'm on the first tier. It's just me and you. Like, right? And it's never going to go out there if you and I are not feeling it together. And I want you to really challenge yourself. How many of you have situations where you feel completely justified in not being happy? What? What if you don't longer have the right to be a cranky goose? What if you actually gave that up for world peace? Now, if you believe that your crankiness was causing issues in the world, would you have another thought about your own crankiness? See, I think most of us don't believe that our crankiness really is that impactful. We think we can just be cranky over here, and it doesn't really affect anybody. Nobody really notices. I'm just cranky. It's just the way I am. But what if your happiness has the transformative power of literally changing the world? Would you be willing to be happier? I think most of us would. I'm going to put a challenge out. If you want world peace, if you want a healing in Ukraine or Russia or wherever, would you be willing to be happier than you've ever been before? Now, Richard, this is a serious place. We talk about serious spiritual ideas. We don't talk about happiness, right? We want to really get to world peace. Okay, this is it. This is your challenge. You ready for your homework? Your homework to see if you can be happier than you've ever been before. And if you can just watch your happiness begin to impact the people around you. Do you think you're more fun to be with when you're cranky or when you're happy? When you're cranky, do people move toward you or away from you? Right? I know. When you're 6'4" and well over 200 pounds and you're cranky, you can clear a room. I'm saying, right? It's just so. If you're a big cranky man, people get out of your way, right? And sometimes that's not all bad. But it doesn't lead to world peace. It doesn't lead to world peace. We don't think our crankiness matters. And it does. It just does. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote this. To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics, and to endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a better place, whether it's by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social issue. To know even one life has breathed easier because of you've lived, this is success. Tonight, I want to challenge you to realize that you have more power than you believe. That you have power in the world. And the way that you show up day in and day out actually matters. That the greatest lie that we ever believe is that we can't impact our world. You can, and you do. And it happens in subtle ways that you don't always see. But the happier you get, the more you trust God, the more you get right with yourself and your life, the more we become an instrument for greater good. That whatever is going on in your life today, I know that we're walking through things. that all of us have stuff that's going on in our world. And sometimes when we have stuff going on in our world, we tell us that we don't have to be happy because we're a victim to this or to that or to the other thing. And tonight, I want you to make an inner commitment to be a place of happiness, to be a place that uplifts, to be a place where you see things differently, where you trust God, and where you've learned to trust life. Will you pray with me? And I invite you to open your mind, your heart, your soul to the activity of God that is right here, right now. Holy Spirit, help me know my power. And help me use my power wisely. And in this day, in this moment, I bring my full life, my full light, my full joy, my full power into this experience. I believe in peace. And that peace actually does start with me. That I can be the change I want to see in the world. Where my joy, my presence can uplift others. So tonight I make an inner commitment to be happier than I've ever been before. To trust life in a greater way than I ever have before. To accept life and not be bitter when things don't go my way. To trust that even when they're not going my way, that God is still at work in my life for greater good. That there is but one presence and one power in my life and in the world, and it's God. So tonight I give thanks. And I let my light shine. I came that you might have life, have peace, have abundance in all things. And so it is. Amen.